Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:06 here now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news coming up this hour. Bobby Burack is with us from Outkick. We talk about whatever that was last night. We'll discuss. And then Brett Tolman is here at 4 o'clock, former U.S. attorney, executive director at Right on Crime, as these little federal judges think that they can get in the way of President Trump. We'll see how that's going to go. We'll talk to Brett Tolman about that, get some real perspective on how that's supposed to work. And then Matthew Coglianese joins us from the Washington Free Beacon. That's at 5 o'clock. How did President Trump become the most popular president ever with Gen Z? Yeah. Matt Continetti, not Gen Z, but he studies them. He'll tell us. That's ahead. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I don't know what that was last night. It was a boring Super Bowl, I guess, is one way to put it. You know, the Eagles just ran away with the whole thing, and you never want that. If you are disinterested in the outcome of the game, if you're not an Eagles or a Chiefs fan, but you do want to watch a good football game, you want it to be close, you want it to be competitive, you don't want it to look like what it looked like last night. I found myself walking away from the television a lot because the game was less interesting than the conversations we were having at home last night. But every so often I check back and I say, whoa, the Eagles are dominating. And sure enough, they emerged victorious. So in the rematch, the Eagles win. We'll talk with Bobby Burack about that coming up. I will say the halftime show didn't rescue it at all, the boredom of the game itself, because I don't know what they were thinking. Normally with the Super Bowl, you pick somebody who's going to broadly appeal to the demo who watches the Super Bowl, the older set usually. So normally it's stars who are just a little bit past their prime, but are the kind of people that everyone knows. You're all familiar with the music. It's broadly accessible. Kendrick Lamar, not so much. And maybe this is just my age. I don't know. But I watched that last night and I said, I don't recognize any of those. I'm not familiar with any of the music. I'm sorry. And I'm not even old. I wasn't familiar with the music. I was like, I don't know what this is. I liked the American flag motif. I thought that was cool. Red, white, and blue. I was pumped about that. I thought that was really neat. The dancers looked like they were having a good time. Although you did get like a pro-Hamas guy. Did you see this? You didn't see it on screen because they really try and manage everything that appears on that screen. But at one point, standing on top of the car on the set was a guy who, as I understand it, was one of the performers, or at least snuck in that way, and was holding up a Hamas flag, jumping up and down on the car in the middle of the set for a long time. And it wasn't until a stage manager, you could tell because she was wearing one of those headsets, comes running over to, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And he takes off running across the field. And usually when you see someone running across a field, that's a good indicator that person needs to be tackled, which is what happened. All the security guards come running out. They tackle the guy. But the halftime show, it was boring. Samuel L. Jackson was out there. He was dressed as Uncle Sam. That was, I guess, cool because his name is Sam. And it's always funny to see him screaming about anything. So that was kind of amusing to me. But no, it wasn't doing much for me last night. So yet another reason to walk away from the television. By the way, not a good business model. If you're Fox, you should probably put something on screen people want to see. How about Trump? How about more Trump? How long did they have Trump on screen last night, Corey? Just the national anthem, right? Was that the only time that he appeared on screen last night? The President of the United States, for the very first time in the history of the Super Bowl, is in attendance. It was literally the first time that's ever occurred. They showed him once during the national anthem. There he was saluting. He was standing next to Ivanka. He looked great. The crowd was really excited that he was there. The crowd, it was funny, the crowd noise at that game last night made it really clear who they liked. They liked the Philadelphia Eagles, and they liked Donald J. Trump. That's who they liked. They did not like Kansas City, and they did not like Taylor Swift. Taylor appeared on screen on the Jumbotron for a moment, and the crowd was booing like crazy that she was there, of course, and she's a Kansas City person, dating their Travis Kelce there. But President Trump, put him on screen. What are you doing, Fox? What? It's so obvious what you should be doing with your camera time. Show us how the president is reacting to the events on the field. Who's he talking to? Hello? Do I need to get in that production booth? Corey, you need to get in there. That would be a much better run operation if Corey got in there. Anyway, that was what happened last night. The left is running around with a conspiracy theory, though, as they often do, that the halftime show was somehow a subversive message meant to target Donald Trump. Can you believe that? Anna, did you see the halftime show? Was there a moment where you thought to yourself, oh, Kendrick Lamar is really sticking it to Trump right now? No. I didn't detect that at all. I was like, why would he be sticking it to Trump? The motif was like the American flag, red, white, and blue, and Kendrick Lamar dancing around, singing about how much he hates Drake. I had to do a lot of research this morning on the specifics here. He hates Drake, and he thinks Drake's a pedophile, but he couldn't say the word pedo last night. They blurred it out. So in that song, is it Not Like Us? Yeah. So the song, it was kind of the finale of the performance last night. He's supposed to scream out. Normally, the lyric is that he thinks that Drake is a, quote, pedo. He's going to yell out, pedo. But they didn't allow him to do it. I think the broadcast, they prevented him from doing it. So instead, they all screamed. It was like the made-for-family version of the song. But I think it was actually made to avoid litigation. I think that's what that version of the song was for Fox. But the left thinks it was a dig at Trump, the performance. And the reason they believe it was a dig at Trump, I kid you not, is because they said that all of the performers were black and Trump would have hated that. Yes, it's as stupid as you could possibly imagine. The Huffington Post has a piece up about it today. And they're quoting all these people saying that like, oh man, he must have been really angry that there were black people all over the field. What? Who is the racist for making an assumption like that? Trump hasn't publicly addressed Lamar's performance yet. Well, you better hope he doesn't. He's not gonna. If he does, it'll be like, hey, I was really bored during that performance. What could they possibly be talking about? Also, they quote random users on social media. Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle Sam, their personification of America, telling Kendrick his performance is too ghetto. And then it cutting to Kendrick's all-black backup dancers arranged as the American flag, all while that man, that would be Trump, is in attendance. Kendrick, I was not familiar with your game, the ex-user wrote. What? Donald Trump, another person writing, Donald Trump is forced to watch Samuel L. Jackson dressed as Uncle Sam introduce Kendrick Lamar at the Super Bowl halftime show after asking the NFL to not show the end racism in the end zones is the headline. First of all, did Trump say don't show end racism? Did he ever say anything like that? I don't think so. That's an invention in this Huffington Post piece, which had no fact-checking whatsoever. The NFL decided to yank it from the field. Instead, they replaced it with choose love. Choose love. And the NFL explained that as, the country's been suffering a lot lately. There's been a lot of disasters all the way from California to North Carolina to the air accident here in Washington, D.C., and they decided choose love would be the message. Of course, also New Orleans, where they were, that terror attack on Bourbon Street. Choose love. Okay, choose love. How about no messages? How about stop with the messages? How about the end zone is an end zone for a football game and not a billboard for whatever you think we want to hear at any given moment? But the left is convinced that somehow Trump would be annoyed that there were black people performing. Have they met Trump? Are they familiar at all with his game? I don't think so. Have they looked at the demographic shift by black voters towards Trump? Have they looked at the results of how black Americans have done under President Trump's administrations? No, they haven't. Instead, they have this sort of two-dimensional racist view about everything. About everything. In fact, today, if you're looking for the dumbest possible takes on this, look no further than, you know what I'm going to say, The View. The View. Here's Ana Navarro, a ridiculous human being, breathing life into this ridiculous conspiracy theory.
You know I don't do sports. You know I don't do football, so I wasn't watching the game. But listen. I think today Donald Trump is going to sign an executive order banning black people from halftime. Because you remember last week we were talking about whether the NFL was capitulating to Trump.
I mean, do you think she's genuinely that stupid? Is this like something she hit her head really hard at one point and she's never recovered from it? Does she know better? I don't know. I just can't tell with her. But she's so dumb. And if she really is that dumb, you know what's happening? ABC and Disney are exploiting her. They're exploiting a group of morons in order to create a show. This is like, remember that show, that internet thing, bum fights? Somebody would pay a couple of bums to fight each other on the street. That was cruel, wasn't it? That was cruel to do that to people who are in a desperate situation. This is Disney's version of bum fights. They send out an entire table of morons to assess the day's events.
Black people from halftime. Because you remember last week we were talking about whether the NFL was capitulating to Trump by removing the term "end racism" from the end zone. Yeah. Boy, did they not capitulate to Trump. When I saw Samuel L. Jackson dressed as a black Uncle Sam introducing Kendrick Lamar, who then had like an entire formation of all black people making a U.S. flag. Listen, this much I know. All the black people on my feed were like, ooh, this is blackity black black. And all the racists who somehow get in, man, were they hopping mad. So if the racists are mad, I am happy as a clam.
It's so stupid. It is so tragically stupid. And it's also kind of a sign of the left's desperation right now. They don't actually know what their line of attack is. Have you noticed how these news cycles change from day to day to day to day to day? It's literally something new today. Like, you know, over the weekend, it was like, people who work in the federal government shouldn't be allowed to know how the federal government spends money. Yeah. They hate the fact that President Trump is hiring federal employees who are actually trying to figure out how the government is spending money. So they want to stop that. They don't want that to happen. And then it's like these ridiculous protests out in front of USAID, or it's screaming at a security guard on one day at the Department of Education. Coming up, I've got another story for you. CNN at the tail end of last week, I think it was on Friday, Thursday or Friday. They ran an entire segment about how it is dangerous. The implication was that it was dangerous, that there's something awful, that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been swearing in members of the cabinet. He's a Supreme Court justice, and he's administering the oath of office to members of President Trump's cabinet. How is that a scandal, exactly? Oh, it's a scandal. Trust me. You're going to hear it. It's very scandalous. It's very scandalous. They even have, like, the suspenseful music underneath the entire news package to let you know how scary it is. Dum, 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 dum. Clarence Thomas administering the oath of office. Dum, 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 dum. It's like, what? Are you serious? Yeah. Yeah. Donna's calling in from Frederick now. She's on line one. Hello, Donna. You're on the Vince Coglianese show.
Hi, Vince. I just wanted to say, you know, I'm not a big fan of halftime shows, and I'm a musician, but it's just not my favorite thing. I just like to focus on the game. But my point is a very different one.
Yeah.
Compared to previous shows, we weren't looking at the leftist ritual-type performances that, sadly, we were all subjected to in previous Super Bowls. And I used to find those not just alarming, but offensive.
Yeah.
I think that maybe they ought to do something different altogether. But I felt like this was, compared to all that, at least they weren't insulting us like they usually do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't, at least, you know, it's sort of my life. I look at a lot of things and I kind of do filter it through the lens of, are they trying to do something here? Or what is this really about? Not for a moment last night. I was watching that. I was just, I was sitting back, I had a drink in my hand, watching the halftime show going, what is this? I don't recognize the music. That was my beef. I was like, I want it to be more interesting. And Donna, there are so many people. There were great musicians yesterday who performed at a number of moments leading up to the Super Bowl. They have all these musicians who perform. And among them, Lady Gaga did a performance in the streets of New Orleans, which was amazing. And I think she's already done a Super Bowl halftime show. Bring her back. She's a phenomenal performer, super talented. Everybody recognizes her music. That guy, John Batiste, who played the piano and played the national anthem last night, That guy is a genuinely brilliant musician. He's very talented, and he could have put on a full-blown halftime show. And he's not well known. In fact, he's probably a lesser-known name than Kendrick Lamar, but still, he's a great musician. I think it would have been great. But anyway, put on a show. That's the only requirement. Put on a great show. And if people don't know your music, convince them that they should start listening. It just didn't do that for me last night, Donna.
And Lady Gaga, to see her dress, in white, that's a nice change of pace instead of meat and other ordered, assorted entrees.
That's right.
It's kind of or coming out of an egg or some weird thing.
Well,
it would just really be nice to just. My advice to them is pick someone that people know that they like.
Yeah. That's
really not a political shill.
Yeah.
For the left.
Bring back Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars crushed it when he did the halftime show at any rate. Hey, thank you, Donna. And about the meat dress, he can't do that anymore because Biden made the price too expensive. Well, I guess we're going to have to track all this traffic coming back to the city. Today, the first day officially that all the federal employees had to be back in the office. We'll see. Maybe people called in, quote unquote, sick today because of it was the day after the Super Bowl. We'll see what the snow means for the rest of the week as well. But at some point, we'll get back to some sort of steady pace. Do you think Trump saves Metro? You think Trump saves Metro in the end? They're always looking for ways. How do we improve ridership? How do we get more people to get on the trains? Let President Trump handle it. He'll take care of things. Go back to work. We'll see. Some federal employees not enthused about this. In fact, they're furious, especially if they didn't vote for Trump. That's the thing that's driving them really crazy. I've got details on that ahead. Bobby Burack is coming up. All ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we'll be joined by Brett Tolman, former U.S. attorney. We talked to him about some of these lower court federal judges thinking they can control the entire Trump administration. Just like that, snap of a finger. Brett reacts to all the breaking news. And then Matthew Continetti will be here. He'll talk to us about why it is that Gen Z is so enamored with President Trump. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Here's the moment when President Trump showed up last night and was saluting during the National Anthem, the one moment that he was on camera.
Through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched.
John Batista doing a great rendition of the National Anthem there with that cool piano. Very cool. That was a cool part of the events last night. Here to discuss all of it, Bobby Burack, columnist over at Outkick. As always, Bobby, good to have you with us.
Vince, happy to be here.
Okay, so it wasn't an exciting Super Bowl. Let's just start there. It was, it was a blowout, which is not what you want to see.
No, and not only that, it was a very anticlimactic blowout. See, sports fans often complain when a game's not close. And I get it, but sometimes that makes for a good story. A couple of years ago, the Seahawks dominated the Denver Broncos in similar fashion. But see, that was fine because the storyline going in was the number one offense led by Peyton Manning versus the number one defense led by Richard Sherman in this Legion of Boom. So that domination played in. Last night, there really wasn't much of a storyline. The Chiefs couldn't hold up on the offensive line. They couldn't get pressure. It was just a bad game, probably the worst Super Bowl I can remember watching.
Do you think Taylor Swift is at all disturbed by her latest record of losing? It's just she endorsed Kamala Harris, big loss. She decided to date this guy, Travis Kelce. She thought he was her meal ticket to a Super Bowl win. Big loss yesterday. And here is what happened when she was shown on the big screen inside the stadium. Just boos and a sad look on her face. She seemed confused. She's not used to a stadium full of people booing her.
Yeah, well, so this reminds me, you remember in August there was this New York Times Siena poll that said Taylor Swift had a lower approval rating than Donald Trump? We all scoffed at that, saying, well, she's a celebrity, he's a presidential candidate, starting to wonder, Vince, maybe that is true. Maybe Taylor Swift is very unpopular despite having some really large, her fan base is large, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong.
Yeah.
But those that are not her fans, they don't have lukewarm opinions on her. They don't like her.
Yeah, kind of interesting. I'm not all in on despising her. I just think she's kind of a goof, and like I think it was so stupid that she endorsed Kamala. But wouldn't she have been a better halftime show than Kendrick Lamar? Like, why is she up in the box? Shouldn't she be on the field performing?
Yes, I got a lot of opinions on this. There's some people really, really mad at me because I didn't like the performance. Some people say it's because I'm racist and hate hip hop. No,
Some
not
people
true, not
say.
true. Some people say, right. It's all good. But here's what I think's happening, Vince. Kendrick Lamar was the first halftime performer post-monoculture, right? If we look at the previous performers, they made their names in the monoculture where things were mainstream. He is a relatively niche performer. So my problem more than anything was I didn't know any of the songs but the one that referenced Drake. And I assume if I don't know, who follows things pretty closely, I work in media, I'm online a lot, probably most Americans are like, we can't understand him. We don't know that song. I think that was why it was such a bad performance.
Well, didn't he perform as a part of that big hip-hop performance a couple years ago? So it was Eminem, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick Lamar, Mary J. Blige. That was, talk about accessible, that was at least much more broadly accessible. People knew the music. It was fun. They were bouncing back and forth between performers. I mean, if you're going to do a hip-hop halftime show, it probably should look more like that than what we saw last night.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the numbers today. Believe it or not, I'm actually writing a column on him right now. The last monoculture rapper was Kanye West. People knew who he was, whether you liked him or not.
Whatever happened to that guy?
Him.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's at. I'm not sure if he was available to perform or not.
He's been going absolutely crazy on social media this past week. Just in case anybody's not on X, don't look at Kanye's Twitter. That's all I can recommend. It's not going well right now.
Well, an update, I just found this out because I'm writing a story. He has deleted his Twitter. Elon didn't do it. Kanye has removed himself from Twitter. Not sure why, but we are.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you though. You were taking a look back though. He was the sort of the last generally accessible guy.
Yeah, I mean, Kendrick Lamar's numbers are actually pretty small. Like he has a new album that comes out and it sells 100,000 copies. Well, Kanye West would sell 800,000 in the first week. So would Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Jay-Z, a bunch of other rappers that I didn't listen to. But the point is that Kendrick Lamar was not on the same level as previous performers, whether it be Prince, the Rolling Stones, Rihanna, Snoop Dogg. So I think a lot of people were just like, wait a minute, who is this guy? What is that song? What is he even saying?
Yeah, and it's not what you want for a halftime show. You're supposed to have a massive draw. Instead, it was kind of a massive yawn. So let me ask you about the NFL, what they're up to. So there's this, there's been a lot of headlines over the fact that they yanked the phrase "end racism" out of the end zones, and they went with "choose love." Now, I was just saying that I think that they should get rid of all of the messages. Like, there's no reason for a message on the field. I don't need a billboard. I just need a field with lines on it so I know if you scored or not. What is the NFL up to, do you think? And are they reading the writing on the wall that people are done being lectured by the football games they watch?
So there was a study that came out last week that for the first time since 2016, Republican support for the NFL is back to its pre-Kaepernick heights, meaning in 2016, Kaepernick knelt and support among Republicans in the NFL plummeted. It has taken them nearly a decade to regain that, and the NFL has now seen record numbers on the same level as 2015, which was pre-anthem controversy. I think this is a business decision of, hey, we finally have real momentum, let's remove all this. But this isn't all that dissimilar to what happened in the NBA. See, after George Floyd died and the country lost its mind and declared everyone racist, the NFL, or the NBA rather, printed the words Black Lives Matter on the court. Well, ratings then dropped 50%. Was it because they promoted Black Lives Matter? Well, I don't know, but the NBA sure thinks so because then they removed those words when the ratings continue to drop, and then they saw a spike. So I think this is mostly just business, the NFL realizing people do not want political messaging associated with football, and why would they?
Yeah, one other thing I have a suspicion about, and I could be wrong, but I've been wrong before. But last night, one of the things that they included that the NFL has been doing now, I guess, in the last few years, perhaps, is they included a rendition of "Lift Every Voice and Sing," which is a great poem turned into a song. It was first originally publicly performed to honor Abraham Lincoln's birthday, so is a fixture as an American tradition. But it's been presented in years past and now recently as the so-called, quote, Black National Anthem, which is a stupid thing because you're supposed to have just one national anthem rather than to sow division. And interestingly, they had this rendition yesterday, "Lift Every Voice and Sing." The PA announcer never referred to it as the Black National Anthem. That wasn't included on screen or wasn't said out loud. And in fact, the performance itself seemed like it was done almost an hour before kickoff. Like they actually did it way before the events of the game began. So my suspicion here is that the NFL was kind of trying to have it both ways. They wanted to include it, but then they kind of didn't really want it that close to game time because they didn't want to create any more controversy for themselves. Do I have that right?
Yes, and there's another angle to this that I did not know, but I just heard within the last hour from Clay Travis, who founded Outkick, the site for which I write. So Fox broadcasted the Super Bowl this year, and he was out there with people throughout the weekend. He reported on his radio show that Fox was very involved in the pregame festivities, and they ordered their cameramen to point the camera at Trump during one of the pregame songs that referenced the word fight. They wanted to recall the fight after he was assassinated. So hearing that
attempted assassination, just to be clear.
Sorry, attempted assassination. Very, very good.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is, so the way the Super Bowl works is it rotates every 4 years. So Fox gets it 1 year, then CBS, then NBC, then now ESPN is also in that rotation. So I'll be curious to see what it looks like next year when NBC has it, then CBS, then Disney. Yeah. It sounds like there was some Fox involvement in this.
You would think so because it's their television broadcast, so they're going to have final say on most of the elements. But what was the deal with them not showing Trump on camera most of the time? It's kind of interesting to me that you have the sitting president of the United States. It's never been done before. No president's ever been to a Super Bowl while they were president. President Trump goes. He was on camera, as far as I'm aware, at least related to the game, only for the national anthem, and that was it?
Yeah, I was very curious how they would do this. And I've spoken to networks in the past, and previously Trump had attended football games. They would tell me, well, because of equal time laws, we can't show him, even though I think if they offer Harris equal time, they could have, but whatever. So I don't really know what the reason was behind it, not showing him. I think they should have, not for political reasons, but just because he was the first president to ever attend a Super Bowl, so I thought it'd be interesting to show his reaction more often. But yeah, as far as I know, he was not shown at all during the actual game, which is probably going to have 120 million viewers.
Did they show Taylor Swift very much?
Not nearly as much as they have. I mean, more than Trump. They showed other celebrities, but no, they didn't focus a lot on the crowd. They were much more focused on, I think, the faces of Mahomes and Andy Reid because they were getting, slapped around like teams don't usually get slapped around in the Super Bowl.
Yes, they were. They were definitely getting slapped around. Okay, and finally, any standout commercials for you last night? That's always the big thing that people watch. If they're not watching for the game, they're actually watching for the commercials. This might be the first time in a long time that I barely watched those either. What did you make of the commercial offerings last night?
Vince, I'm not going to lie to you. I can't remember a single one because I was so disgusted by the game that I was during commercial break. I was thinking, what went wrong? What could have been a better Super Bowl matchup? So I don't even remember any of the commercials. No, I don't want to be dramatic, but I hated all of it. I hated halftime. I hated the game. I hated the festivities beforehand, the pregame stuff.
Yeah.
I just thought it was an awful night. And my friend Jason Whitlock, who I know you've had on the show,
Yeah.
he claimed that this is the night the NFL peaked and that we'll look back and say that was the night the NFL lost popularity and lost its way. I'm almost there because I'm so disgusted by what happened last night, just all around. It was such a bad showing for the brand of football. Like, usually after the Super Bowl, I'm kind of depressed, like, okay, no more football until Labor Day.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm not going to miss football this time because that game was so bad all around. The officiating was awful, too. Flag after flag, most of which weren't even penalties. It just got me so mad.
Yeah, all right. Well, there you go. Patooey. You don't like it. Bobby Burack, as always, from Outkick. Great to talk to you, sir. Always appreciate it. All right. Coming up, we've got a bunch of details on all of these judges across the country who are now trying to kamikaze the Trump administration from carrying out the will of the American people. You're not allowed to do that. The voters selected him specifically to do this. We'll get into that with Brett Tolman in a moment and what all of the legal back and forths mean. But the Trump administration fighting pretty hard in court and saying these judges are out of line, unconstitutional in their behavior. We'll see. We'll see what Brett Tolman has to say about that coming up. Before we get there, Congressman Don Beyer is a Democrat who represents a district in Northern Virginia. And Don Beyer this weekend was saying all sorts of nasty and untrue things about members of the Trump administration. And here he is defaming everyone he can possibly think of. Take a listen.
The cabinet appointments, Hegseth, a known wife beater and alcoholic. Patel, who vows revenge on everyone, RFK Jr., I don't need to say more. And Tulsi, who could never pass a security test on her own. And then maybe worst of all is Elon Musk, a neo-Nazi from South Africa, surrounded by his 18-year-olds, taking over the payment system. A guy not elected, not vetted, certainly not endorsed by the Senate, who now has access to our personal identity information, our medical records, our bank information. And we've got legislation to stop it, but we're in the minority.
Don Beyer has no evidence to support, as far as I can tell, anything he just said. Pete Hegseth, he called him a known wife beater. He wasn't even accused of that. Did I miss that, Corey? He was never accused of anything like that. He was accused of all sorts of nonsense. That wasn't one of the things. So Don Beyer just straight up making things up, saying he's an alcoholic. This is a conspiracy theory on the left. Meanwhile, Hegseth has said that to alleviate any concerns you might have, he's not touching a drop of alcohol while he is Secretary of Defense. He's angry that Kash Patel, quote, vows revenge, whatever that means. Kash Patel will come in to clean up the corruption that is inside of that FBI as a result of the left abusing its power. So Kash Patel is going to be a breath of fresh air there. Tulsi could never pass the security test, he said. How many times has she passed? She's passed a bunch. It's like something like 8 times she has been able to successfully get her clearance. So a lie out of Don Beyer. And then he says that Elon Musk is a neo-Nazi. He's a terrible neo-Nazi, I should point out. He loves Israel. He went there. He traveled around with the Israeli government. He's a big fan. And they're saying he's a neo-Nazi. Again, he's lying about that. And did you hear what he said? He said he's from South Africa. Now, Elon Musk is an American citizen. Does Don Beyer do this to everyone he criticizes? Everyone? Does he judge people negatively for having immigrated to the United States and become U.S. citizens? That's a knock against you. He's from South Africa, he said. How grotesque. Listen to that guy. He sounds like a greasy used car salesman. Oh, wait. He is. Coming up, Brett Tolman will join us next.